Bill and Ted Face the Music is an extremely pleasant experience, and it's a smart movie in terms of being a Bill and Ted sequel or finale. But Bill and Ted Face the Music is also, maybe not of its own making, stuck in an impossible place in terms of what it has to achieve. I feel for it in that regard, but I also think that it's a movie whose most interesting ideas kind of get put by the wayside. I actually quite liked Bill and Ted Face the Music, but I think it has one very specific core issue, which we can get into when we get over the spoilers.
Sure, yeah. I mostly agree with you. You know, I'm not a huge Bill and Ted fan. Like, I saw the first movie a few years ago, and I thought, well, it was okay. And then I saw Bogus Journey. I was like, oh, this is what I was looking for. Like, I think Bogus Journey's great. Mm-hmm. But it turns out I forgot a whole bunch of details from them that bigger fans of the movies that had, you know, kind of latched onto. And so watching Bill and Ted Face the Music, there's a bunch of stuff in the movie that turns out is like in jokes and references to things that had happened earlier in the series that I had simply just forgotten about. So I'm as close as we're going to get to like somebody who's brand new to Bill and Ted watching Bill and Ted Face the Music. As somebody who doesn't have a whole lot of knowledge of the series and the characters, I came in and for me, this movie is a fine way to spend, 90 minutes? Mm-hmm. It's short. It's incredibly sweet. And one of my favorite things about it is that the whole thing feels very effortlessly graceful. It's not at all a clunky movie. I mean, except for maybe a couple moments. But what I like about that feeling of effortlessness is that it makes the movie easy to watch. It's a super easy watch. It's warm. It's huggy. But I also recognize that that feeling of effortlessness on the part of the viewer is actually due to a lot of effort on the part of the cast and the crew, to make this a good movie. So I don't want to discount any of the hard work that went into this when I say that it's effortless. But it's a very simple watch in that, sure, it's a time travel movie, but in the tradition of the previous two, it's just kind of like, who gives a shit? Let's do whatever it is we want to do and execute these kind of dimensional travel, time travel things. And everybody speaks a different language that we bring along on the journey, and yet they don't care. And it's all just so simple and kind of like, fuck it, go with it. That it kind of whisks you along with it. It's pleasant.
Well, this has always been one of the strengths of the Bill and Ted movies in general. They are movies that never get hung up on stuff. Mm-hmm. They are vehemently opposed to getting hung up on certain things if it means it's going to stop the flow of the story they want to tell and the fun they want to have. And screenwriters Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson, who created the characters of Bill and Ted, I think when they were in like an improv comedy troupe and they performed these characters, they have been kind of, the shepherds of the series. And I think that it's very clear that Face the Music for them was a movie they felt they had to make, and not so much just, it has to close out a trilogy, but it feels like they wanted to reflect a bit on Bill and Ted as a thing, an IP, a thing that they had created, and also like kind of ask what was the point of Bill and Ted. And that is some weighty thematic stuff to deal with, and the movie touches on it. But it also wants to be, like you're saying, an effortless, pleasant, huggy, sweet time. And I think the movie has to sacrifice certain more potent ideas in the thematic arena in order to achieve being a pleasant experience.
Yeah. To give a little brief summary of the setup without getting into spoilers, after their shot at superstardom at the end of Bogus Journey, Bill and Ted and their band that they assembled in that movie have a rather precipitous fall to the bottom of the charts. And soon Bill and Ted are still making music, but without their support of their band and without the kind of fame and notoriety that they used to have. They're both still married to their wives, the women they met in Bogus Journey, but they have daughters, and the daughters I think are both like 24.
Well, let me correct. They didn't meet them in Bonus Journey. They're the princesses from Excellent Adventure.
Oh.
And the crux of their problem is that it has been 30 years since, they've been told that they were going to write a song that would unite the world and would become the foundation for civilization in the future.
Right.
And when we meet them and face the music, they still have not written the song that will unite the world. They've been constantly trying. Mm-hmm. We're introduced to them playing it at the wedding of Ted's brother, who is now marrying.
I think we're kind of getting into some spoiler stuff, but
I don't know. This is like the first scene of the movie, if that's spoilery. Oops.
Yeah.
But the setup for this is that they're two old washed up guys playing at a wedding reception, and the song that they play has some really long pretentious title, and they're playing stuff like like Ted's playing the theremin, and they're trying all of these different things to hope that this will be the song. This will be the one. And they still haven't gotten it. So, yeah, setting up at the beginning that Bill and Ted have kind of washed out. Like, they never achieved the greatness they were told they were going to achieve. It has impacted their relationship with their wives. Their daughters, they seem to have... I like the fact that they have a very, very healthy relationship with their daughters, which we'll get into when we talk about spoilers. Mm-hmm. But they are thinking about maybe hanging it up and not pursuing this musical dream and this mandate that they were given when they were young. And when that happens, all of a sudden, Kristen Schaal shows up from the future. She's playing Kelly, who is the daughter of Rufus, who was played by George Carlin in the original movies. And she's telling them, like, hey, we need to take you to the future. Something's up. All of reality is starting to break, and people from all across the timeline are being zipped out of existence and plopped into different points in time.
Yeah.
And this is occurring more and more. And the only thing that's going to stop it is if you guys write and perform the song that's going to unite the world and save reality by, I think it's like 7:17 p.m.
Right. They literally have 75 minutes from that point.
Yes, which I like.
The movie actually takes a little bit of liberty with that, but they're given 75 minutes to write the song. And it's like, well, okay, that's a good enough sort of call to adventure. And I like that, they're given high stakes here in the sense like any other movie would be like, oh my God, the world is ending and these are the two heroes that have to bring it on. But already just sort of from the tone of the movie, like, these guys got this,
Well, it's also it's that doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Again, maybe we can talk about this more in spoilers, but saving the world is the ticking clock that they're given. But there are kind of much more interesting, complex conflicts going on in the script that I think could have made for a more interesting movie.
Yeah, the first act is, I don't know, maybe about 17 minutes long before they get this ultimatum that says you got to write this song or the world's going to end. Before all that happens, they actually do a fair amount of character building, kind of reestablishing their dynamic, and they present these issues in their marriages and things like that. It's like, well, this is all good interpersonal conflict for these two. And there's some funny jokes at the expense of Bill and Ted's like kind of codependent friendship now, where they're sort of a two-headed dude. And then, when you get the sense that a small rift might be opening between them, the movie kind of decides not to go there. And it says, look, we don't want to have Bill and Ted be on the outs in this movie and like infighting. Like this isn't going to be that kind of movie. This is the kind of movie that I watch very rarely. I hear people say sometimes, like, I just want to watch media and movies where like people are nice to one another and things generally work out. And it's not stress inducing or anxiety inducing. Like, this is that kind of movie. It's relatively, well, I shouldn't even say relatively. It's a low conflict kind of movie.
Well, you say it's low conflict in a movie where literally all of reality is one of the stakes.
Yeah. And yet somehow it feels so like, that's okay.
I think that's present just in the Bill and Ted characters in general. Mm-hmm. That's kind of, I think, the purpose to them. And I think it's one of the reasons I agree with you where I think Bogus Journey is the best movie and it's my favorite movie. But I think it's one of the reasons why they became so instantly endearing in the first film is because we don't find out until the end of the movie that, oh, well, they have to stay together as a band so that they can write this song to save the future. Throughout the movie, it's just No, they just need to do their history report.
Yeah.
And they just need to pass their history. So it's like the low stakes on that end up being much more important. But I think that has kind of informed the tone of Bill and Ted as characters and as movies, where it's like, look, you can have all this crazy stuff happening. They can die and go to hell. They can transport all over time and space and reality. But at the end of the day, Bill and Ted are still just these kind of two lovable slacker guys.
Sure.
And that's kind of the mood they bring to everything.
Yeah, and they've kind of gotten over the unfortunate casual homophobia of the first two movies. And they've fully embraced their kind of homo-romantic friendship.
I was kind of surprised they didn't directly address that in this movie.
I don't know. I think it's an important enough address to just say, like, these two guys have grown comfortable with being this present in one another's lives and this, like, intimately sort of tender and involved with one another.
No, I think that's, I just assume, these days everything has to be very, we gotta address that specific bullet point.
The movie doesn't start with a wedding anymore. It starts with an apology. Dear audience.
Right.
30 years ago, I said a word that many people find offensive. It's like,
yes.
The sportscaster.
This program contains strong language. Whatever that American Hero Story opening. But no, so I think that attitude is just baked into these movies. I think one of the biggest issues that I have, this is not going to get into spoilers, but in comparison to the other Bill and Ted movies, Excellent Adventure, which is directed by Stephen Herrick, who directed Critters, I just have to say that, it's not a poorly constructed movie.
No.
It's fine. But the direction in Bogus Journey, whose director I do not have pulled up right now, the direction in Bogus Journey is great. Like, it is a great looking film.
It's a much better effects film.
It's an effect. Well,
Peter Hewitt was the director of Bogus Journey.
Peter Hewitt. Well, Bogus Journey is more of a deliberately un-effects film in comparison to Excellent Adventure, and just the filmmaking level emphasized and amplified some of the great things that were being done in that movie. Here, the director is Dean Parasot, who I'm sure I'm saying a name wrong because I say all names wrong on this show. He directed Galaxy Quest. Now, Galaxy Quest is great. I very much enjoy Galaxy Quest, but I wouldn't call it a remarkably directed movie.
No, it's absolutely fine as like a genre science fiction film, but it's not like
sure.
a visionary.
So my point being that it's kind of a good comparison to Bill and Ted Face the Music, because the direction in Bill and Ted Face the Music is very, very plain and unassuming and almost backgrounded.
Yeah, it's one of the things I think that makes the movie so easy to digest from a viewing level, because it's so unstylized that it doesn't present any kind of challenging sort of artistic bent to anything.
It is extremely safe filmmaking, and that's fine. That's not a bad thing. But when we get into spoilers and we talk about the potential of some of what could have gone on in the movie, I think that would have necessitated more some stronger directorial choices.
Yes.
The fact that Bill and Ted Face the Music is directed to kind of be as accessible as possible from the filmmaking standpoint, that just, unfortunately, that makes it a little less interesting to me. But like I say, it makes it more accessible.
Yeah. Unfortunately, some of the less interesting stuff does hurt it as an effects film, and it is rather dependent upon computer generated effects for many of its scenes and sets and things like that. When Bill and Ted arrive in the future, it is almost a featureless void. It's just two people against two. And it's, we've had this problem, and I think it's a bigger problem in movies that are trying to make their locations feel real. Like, in a lot of ways, Bill and Ted Face the Music's easygoing nature makes us all way more forgivable, where people are just like, yeah, the movie's just trying to have fun. Like, don't worry about it. Whereas you have these other sort of like huge feeling blockbusters that feel like they're not taking place anywhere at all. That I think is a bigger issue. But here, void space is still a personal annoyance for me.
Yeah, it's a problem, but I think we're willing to give it more of a pass for two reasons. One, because of the tone of the piece, because a Bill and Ted movie is like, yeah, dude, you're just bebopping around with these guys. Who cares? And two, this is a way lower budget film than some $200 million Marvel Cinematic Universe movie.
Yeah.
Where in that kind of a movie, void space stuff, especially when framed for action, is so jarring. In this, it's like, oh man, that sucks. They had to shoot this low budget, so this is all just being shot in a garage, in Van Nuys or something.
Right.
With green screens. And it's like, no, that sucks. But it's not a deal breaker.
Yeah, they shot in Louisiana for the most part.
Okay.
And the reported budget on this is $25 million, which is right now pretty fucking low.
It's low, and I have to imagine a significant enough of that chunk goes to Keanu Reeves and I hope Alex Winter.
Yeah, I certainly hope he was paid fairly for his acting in the movie, because he is up there acting with Keanu, meeting him on the level. Like, I miss that guy as an actor, because he's doing good work in here, man.
He's really good. In some ways, I think there are moments in this movie where he is outshining Keanu.
Absolutely. So I'd like to talk about some spoilery things, but first, let's do some calls to action. This episode of GenreVision is brought to you by our premium subscribers at patreon.com/GenreVision. For $5 a month, our premium subscribers get access to an ever-growing library of exclusive bonus content, including weekly pre-show recordings, peeks behind the scenes, and a big currently consuming session every month. Sign up at patreon.com/GenreVision.
If you love what we do here on GenreVision, go to the Apple Podcast Store and rate and review the show. It really helps us out in terms of visibility for the show. It's kind of the best marketing we can afford right now. And if you do leave a written review, we will feature it here on the show.
Every written review and rating on the show has the potential to push us higher in the Apple Podcast charts, which is nothing but good for the show. So please, your reviews and your ratings are much appreciated. I think now is a good point where we can start getting into spoiler territory. Rest assured, Bill and Ted hear the call to adventure, and they see this deadline and they go, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. And they go on a time traveling adventure. And that's where all this starts.
So, okay, spoiler time, if you're listening right now. So the real great wrinkle in this story for me is Bill and Ted get sent to the future. They are told, you have to record this, write and record this song by 7/17 or reality is going to end. So Bill and Ted are like, well, how are we going to write this song in 75 minutes? Well, they come up with the idea to go into their own personal futures and steal the song from themselves once they've written it.
Yeah, it almost sounds like it's setting up a heist movie structure, but that is abandoned really, really quickly, because when they get to the very near future, they arrive to find different selves who are total like open mic night burnouts.
And they're dicks.
Ted has started drinking. Yeah, they're awful.
Like Bill and Ted, two of the absolute most, easygoing, lovable characters in genre film, their future versions suck. And it was in that moment, because this had been in the advertising, and I assumed it was going to be kind of just like an aside. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, they'll do this, it won't work, and they'll go into another plan. But Bill and Ted, for the majority of the movie, their storyline involves them jumping into different points in their future, being confronted with older versions of themselves, and seeing what's going on at that point with them. And at every turn, the older versions, until the end, are antagonists. And this was the idea where I was like, this is so good. This is such a brilliant writing kind of just idea of like, let's do what is almost assuredly going to be the last Bill and Ted movie, at least with Keanu and Alex Winter in the roles, that let's make Bill and Ted antagonists at the same time they're being protagonists. Mm-hmm. There is something so clever about that when the movie was doing that, when they're, when they run into each other in the open mics, they're like, yeah, your wives leave you. And they're like, what? You ruined our marriage?
No, you ruined your marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I that's really clever. And like, this is a riff on what happened in Bogus Journey, where we had an evil Bill and an evil Ted in that movie.
But they were robots. They weren't really Bill and Ted.
Yes. But thematically, Face the Music does, I think, a way better thing by pointing out the character's flaws and sort of extrapolating onto like, future versions. Like, well, let's take this flaw in the character and sort of extrapolate it further out. There's also a killer robot that starts to show up. We'll talk about that robot later because there are like more fun scenarios. Like we've got the burnout, the open mic burnouts. Then there are the ones that they think are like the really posh English accented ones that like Shirley wrote the song to unite the world. And something, so in this scene, they go to a big mansion where these more successful Bill and Ted are hanging out. And it's the same fucking mansion that they shot Capone at. Yeah. Josh Trank shot Capone at the same fucking mansion. I was looking at the back porch and I was looking at the front driveway with the fountain. I'm like, God damn, Tom Hardy's right over there. I can see him. It's some mansion in Covington,
Where's
Louisiana.
the money buried?
Yeah. There's the alligator. Watch out. See Capone if you haven't. But this actually had like one of the few true like gags in the movie for me, because I think as a comedy, it's not really brimming with jokes. It is not a tongue-in-cheek movie. It is sincere almost to a fault. When they realize that this Bill and Ted with the English accents are full of shit and are con artists, Dave Grohl walks up to the front door and says, "What the hell are you doing in my house?"
Well, there's that. There's the fact that they reveal, they take off their wigs and, they're bald and fat and gross and everything.
The makeups are fun in this movie.
Yes, they are. But you talk about the comedy of it all. And I do think this is not like a jokey movie where, there are moments that are kind of punctuated for humor, but a lot of the humor I think is attempting to come strictly from performance choices. And that's certainly, I think, the case when we talk about Bill and Ted's daughters. These are Billy and Thea, played by Bridget Lundy Payne and Samara Weaving, who, in all honesty, I wish they were in the movie more.
Same. Yeah, they're very good.
They're very good. I like the fact that it would be very easy to create conflict by having there be some kind of conflict between Bill and Ted and their daughters. But I like that the movie doesn't do that. I like that they just have a really good, warm, supportive relationship with their daughters. Because their daughters are basically just carbon copies of them when they were young. Mm-hmm. And so their daughters are really into music and super knowledgeable about it.
Yeah, they're actually not just sort of intuitively fun musicians or good musicians. They actually have a really wide knowledge base of music. So they have this like really deep expertise on classical music, things like that. It was like, oh yeah, these chicks rock. Let's have them more. More.
Yeah.
Than
Well,
please.
they are being asked to do basically impressions of Bill and Ted as, or rather Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter when they were playing the characters. I think they do a very good job. Like there are times when Bridget Lundy Payne is so channeling young Keanu, it's eerie.
Yeah, she does a fantastic job with that. And if they decide to make another one with these two, I would
be there in a heartbeat.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would love that.
I'm interested in pretty much anything Samara Weaving does already. So
she has pretty much become genre royalty at this point.
Yeah, she's great.
She's kicking butt. But so I like that they have this really warm, supportive relationship with their daughters. That their daughters see them get taken to the future, and the first thing they think is like, "Oh man, we have to help out our dads." Mm-hmm. And so their plan is to basically, they are the excellent adventure section of the movie, and that they're going to travel through time and get all of these famous musicians to be the band for Bill and Ted's song.
Yeah.
And
now, is this the most complicated plot of any of the Bill and Ted movies? It has to be, right?
Probably simply because there are multiple plots going on.
Right. We've got time traveling Bill and Ted, reality hopping Bill and Ted trying to save their marriages and steal the song. You have the daughters trying to gather band members. The wives are out looking for alternate realities in which their marriages are successful, even though that's not, the mechanics of that aren't all that crucial to the plot. And then you have a robot traveling through time trying to kill Bill and Ted. So you have all these interweaving time traveling and space hopping plot lines, but it's never complicated. Again, it aces that feeling of just like effortless, like, they'll run into each other sometimes in realities, and it'll be like, oh, hey, yeah, you're here. All right.
Well, yes, when in a move that is kind of delightfully shocking, Billy and Thea get all of these musicians. They had the guy like Jimi Hendrix and Louis Armstrong and Mozart. And I'm going to talk about this in just a second, but they get them all together. And then immediately when they get back to the present, this killer robot vaporizes them and sends them all to hell, which is, I think that's very funny. I wish they would have mentioned, like, why does everybody go to hell? Like,
yeah. It's just when they die, they go to hell. And this really is only for plot convenience reasons.
Well, yes, it's a place where they can get everybody to meet up eventually.
Yeah.
So talking about, they go back in time and they meet, the first person they go visit is Jimi Hendrix, and they're like, we want you to be in this band. He's like, I don't buy what you're selling. So then they travel back further in time and get Louis Armstrong. The actor who is playing Louis Armstrong is like so into this particular cartoon take on the character.
It's goofy, but in a way that is not offensive. Like, it's kind of adorable.
It's super heartfelt.
Yeah, and it's oh god damn it, Capone did Louis Armstrong too.
There you go.
How is this not my shelf pick? Anyway, it's a young Louis Armstrong. It's a really different take. Yeah,
but the point is that I want to make is that the Bill and Ted movies, for being so focused around rock music and music in general, and having cameos by different musicians in certain movies, they've never been about music. And making this a movie that is actually about music and the power of music, and I think very importantly, there is a reason why they go back and get Jimi Hendrix, Louis Armstrong, a potentially legendary Chinese flautist who is actually a woman.
Yep, Ling Lun.
They are talking about the diversity that is inherent in the history of rock and roll.
Yeah, they actually have 4 black members of the band. You've got the unnamed drummer that they get from way back in prehistory. Mm-hmm. You've got Louis Armstrong. You've got Jimi Hendrix. And then in like a very Rick and Morty kind of gag, Kid Cudi, the rapper, shows up at one point in the movie. And evidently he's like a master physicist in this reality.
Yeah.
And so he's mostly around to spout like technobabble, which I wish was funnier than the movie thinks it is, because it's a good idea in theory.
I get the point of it, to be like, okay, here's this celebrity figure. We're going to make them way more knowledgeable than they ever should be about something as, impossible to grasp as quantum physics and things like that. It's like, I get the joke of that on paper, but in execution, it's like, yeah, I also just don't think Kid Cudi's that good at nailing that joke.
Yeah, his I don't dislike Kid Cudi at all, but like his screen presence isn't, he's not on everybody else's level.
But I get it. You throw in a notable figure like that. If it was like Lady Gaga, and then all of a sudden Lady Gaga's spouting quantum mechanics, that's supposed to be funny. I get it. Yeah, I mean, I guess we can talk about this, because I know this is one of your core issues of the movie, is that you just don't think it's a very funny movie.
I didn't think it was all that funny. It was pleasant throughout. Like, there was never a point in the movie where I was like, this sucks, this is bad, this is stupid, this is unfunny. It was just pleasant. But I didn't think it was a particularly funny comedy.
I don't remember, we were talking earlier, it's like, I don't have any side-splitting laughs or anything, but I remember chuckling and like you're saying, I remember having a good time with it. My big issue is that the movie kind of abandons its most interesting wrinkle after a point, which is that Bill and Ted continue. They're like, well, maybe we go farther in the future and we'll have the song. And each time they go, they get worse and worse until they finally get to themselves, and they're these like jacked up bros in prison with prison tats and tats that say like excellent and all this. I think like Ted has a mohawk and a giant bushy like Kimbo Slice beard.
Sure. And this is all very like Rick and Morty and Back to the Future Part 2, where it's like they keep fucking it up. And
sure, but I liked this as like, okay, this is really interesting. And then Bill and Ted jump into the future and meet themselves when they're essentially on their deathbeds, that they are these old guys in some futuristic retirement home. Of course, they're in the same room together in beds, and all of a sudden it's just Bill and Ted, and the old man makeup on both of them looks wonderful. Like, I love it.
Yeah, those are the best makeups in the movie. Those old man makeups are awesome, and they do some really clever shooting around using older body doubles.
Yeah.
So in things like close-ups on the hands and things like that, sometimes they'll use the hand in the makeup, but like when young Alex Winter has to hug his older counterpart, when they do the over the shoulder shot, they actually have like a really old dude there, and it sells the gag well enough. There is one extreme close up of Alex Winter's fingers later on in the movie where I'm like, ooh, they needed to paint out some seams on that shot.
Whoops.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, old Bill and Ted are just like, yeah, everything's cool. Everything's going to work out. Everything's fine. Here's a little zip drive with the song on it. Here you go. And I was like, oh, well, what?
Yeah.
Like, and it wasn't a what in terms of like, how did this happen in the mechanics of the movie? Because mechanics don't matter in a Bill and Ted movie. Mm-hmm. Like you just go with the flow and enjoy your time with these characters. But this moment was like, well, then what was the point of them running into antagonistic versions of themselves for so long if at the end they still ended up being cool, chill, old Bill and Ted? I think that through line was so fascinating and such a place that they could have really, really dug deeper on, that to kind of end it with like, and it's not even the end of the movie, but it's the end of that kind of arc being, no, everything's fine. Don't worry. Bill and Ted aren't actually the bad guys. Like, you can't really make Bill and Ted the bad guys. They're going to be okay and they're going to be fine and everything works out once they're older. I was like, man, I think you dropped the ball here.
Yeah, I mean, there is potential for this movie to kind of chase conflicts further at pretty much every step, and yet it chooses not to, because it's trying to be, again, that sort of light, easygoing movie experience. And I think it aces that. Like, that's the reason I think that this is overall like a good time that's like worth your PVOD money.
Absolutely. No, I agree with that entirely. But another point to bring to that, which I know is something you wanted to bring up, is the killer robot sent from the future.
Yes.
So the killer robot sent from the future is because the head of the future council is like, well, the prophecy of Bill and Ted could be interpreted different ways. Some people believe that Bill and Ted have to die for everything to be okay. So I'm going to send a killer robot back into the past to kill them. It is a plot line that I understand why it's there eventually, because eventually this robot is used as a writing device to kill a bunch of people and send everybody to hell so that everybody can meet up in hell to go to the finale. But otherwise, this robot character is pretty much a rehash of what they did with Death's character in Bogus Journey.
Yeah.
In that he starts off as an antagonist who is trying to, chase Bill and Ted down. Eventually they warm up to him. They turn this threatening presence into a goofball, and he is now part of the gang. The robot is played by Anthony Carrigan, I believe his name is.
It's the guy who plays NoHo Hank on Barry.
And he's amazing in Barry. In this, I didn't know it was him until I looked it up, because he is buried under all of this robot makeup and prosthetics. And
it's a big fucking costume and makeup too.
It's a big costume, and it's another part of the directing and style problem that I have, is that it just looks like one of those get-ups you'd see on like the sci-fi reality show Face Off.
Yeah, I wish it were a funny makeup. You know what I mean? Because there's not a whole lot that's like funny about it. Eventually, the robot comes around and has this sort of change of heart. Bill and Ted actually do something that I think is totally on character, and I like this. They realize that they would give up everything to save their daughters, so they snap the USB drive in half that contains the pre-written song. And I was like, okay, yeah, I like that. That's a good wrinkle. But as good as Anthony Carrigan is in his like little bits and pieces here and there, MVP is still fucking Bill Sadler, man.
Bill Sadler, you do get to see him show up as Death again, and it's a wonderful, warm treat. And it's probably one of the more effectively emotional beats in the movie.
Yeah,
because
they come up with a story about the breakup, which is healed well. I think it's good.
Yeah, I like Billy and Thea. appeasing him by talking about all of his solo projects.
Yeah,
like,
the names of the songs they came up with for his albums were cute jokes.
What was like Too Pale to Cry or something?
Yeah.
Like all of that is so fun. And I mean, it's William Sadler. That's another element where it's like he so clearly loves doing this and is having a fun time being in this makeup and getting to use this indeterminable Eastern European accent that can, it's one of those things where it's like, well, if his accent changes from scene to scene, I don't care, because it's like,
who gives a fuck? It's just Bill Sadler having fun, man.
Yeah, and that is definitely, I think, kind of the end result of the movie, is that who cares? You're just having fun. But it does mean that the movie's not quite as indelible as I think it could be, or as indelible as previous Bill and Ted movies have been.
I agree. I think that while the movie is fun overall and pleasant overall, and I would recommend it to pretty much anybody listening, I think it had lots more opportunities to explore things a little bit more deeply. I understand it was going to be limited by budget, but I do think they could have made some decisions to tighten this up a bit. I mean, not that it's a terribly sort of loose movie in technical regards. It's fine, but it's like, does it have a particularly great edit? Not really. I think the thing that's lacking the most is like, well, how effective is it as a comedy? Not very effective, but I also actually have to question, like, how hard is it actively trying to be a comedy? Because it is by no means like a really, like, hey, let's throw a joke out every 7 seconds. It's not doing that. It's cute, and I that's such a terrible term to throw at a movie, but I don't think it's necessarily an inaccurate descriptor of this movie.
Well, my read has been that this is the most restrained Bill and Ted movie. The other movies are willfully anarchic, and I think that's part of their charm. Bill and Ted Face the Music is a movie that can only exist from people who, have aged. Like, it's an older man's movie.
Yeah, it doesn't have that youthful energy, and nor should it.
No, I'm not saying that it needed to be more anarchic.
Yeah, I know.
So I think that as a comedy, it's okay, and there are definitely moments that made me laugh, but like you're saying, I don't know if this is the only Bill and Ted movie where it's great. It has a greater goal than just being funny and crazy. Mm-hmm. And that greater goal, I think, the maturity that comes along with it, the ability to do some self-reflecting on Bill and Ted as a concept and as characters, I think is really good. I think where the movie ends, which I won't spoil, I mean, it ends. It's very definitive.
Yeah, a little abrupt.
Yeah, I will agree with that. But I see the point behind it, because they want to close out the Bill and Ted series with a very direct, clear message. And the message being that what really matters is people coming together and uniting for a common good cause.
Yeah, and I think it ends with like a voiceover from the daughters, and I think the last thing they say is, and everything was good, and all was good, and it was good, something like that, and just click, and the movie is over, like right after the climax. And I was like,
well, it is over, like story wise for the most part, but then it immediately goes to all of these fan filmed videos of fans playing instruments, and specifically playing air guitar.
Yeah.
Which was this big contest thing that it's like, hey, you can be in the Bill and Ted movies, submit yourself playing your favorite instrument or just wailing on air guitar. And that feeds into what the final part of the matter, I guess spoilers, we're in spoilers still, but the spoiler being that everybody across all of time, space, and reality have to play this song together at the same moment. That's what actually saves reality. The song itself isn't what's important. And so ending the movie with these images of, real people celebrating and having fun through the power of music, it's like, yeah, that reinforces the message of the movie. And there is a post-credit scene, which is cute and feels like a not necessarily a a good thematic send-off, but an appropriate kind of fan send-off.
Yeah. I do wish that the movie had taken a couple extra minutes and shown us, some of the things that had taken root as far as conflict in that first act. Like maybe Bill and Ted are a little too dependent on one another. I'd like to see that sort of resolved. And
well, all of that gets resolved, but it is all like,
but magically at the click of a finger, it's resolved in the same way that they can get everybody throughout all reality playing musical instruments at the same time, which is an impossible thing. But the movie makes you believe that it could happen as easily as it does, because it's so unconcerned with the logistics of anything like that. Where a character can say, in case you're wondering, I'm essentially an infinite me.
Yes.
And that's all he has to say. And we understand. It's like, okay, well, this is what the movie's going to do. And it's just going to do it. And it's going to be light and fun. And, who cares about logic?
I applaud this movie because I hate that a lot of movie conversation has devolved from art appraisal into puzzle solving.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to figure out logistics of puzzle solving. And this is a movie that outright refutes that. It's like, that is not what matters in a story like this.
Yeah, focus on the sincerity, focus on the message, focus on the emotion.
Yes, this isn't Tenet. Like, you're not going to be sitting here and having to, take notes and draw maps and stuff like that to figure out what's going on. And, this is not a movie for which YouTube explainer videos needs to be made. It's just, no, it is just supposed to be a pleasant, warm final send-off to two pleasant, warm characters. And in that arena, I think it absolutely succeeds, and that anybody who spends the time with these characters will have a good time doing so.
I certainly hope so. I did.
As always, we want to thank you so much for listening. I'm Drew Deitch.
I'm Travis Newton.
And we'll see you next week.
Right here on GenreVision.